evening, everybody. This is Darius Assemi, your host at GVWire Unfiltered. Welcome to another great edition and episode this evening. We have two special guests. Council member Miguel Arias will be joining us here in a few minutes, and also Ida Rashidian, who's an immigration lawyer from Los Angeles. She's practiced in New York, and she's currently practicing in Los Angeles. I want to ask her how close to the riots she is when she comes on. A New York law graduate uh, and UC Santa Cruz with undergrad. So, of course, Bill and I will be running the show. Mike Carbasi is going to join us tonight. I think he's running a few minutes late. So let me quickly dive in. Beautiful, fantastic weather today. Only barely triple digit, and in the cool 90s for the rest of the week. But look at the lows in the 60s, low 60s, which means you can leave your windows open, as a lot of us immigrants from the Middle East did at night because we didn't have air conditioning. Ceiling fan worked really well at the time. Okay, so with that, let's dive into Israel seizes Gaza-bound aid ship in international waters. We covered that yesterday, and of course, uh, Greta Thunberg has been detained but released by Israeli forces that they didn't seize the, what was the word? They didn't raid the ship, her humanitarian ship or flotilla, but they detained the crew and is calling the voyage a propaganda stunt. But we know that there's lots of folks in Palestine starving to death, want any kind of help, and of course, very limited access to food becoming available to the starving Palestinians in Gaza. Um, and President Trump is working on getting a solution, but it's been months with very little humanitarian aid allowed. And my question always is, why can't we get United Nations peacekeeping forces in Gaza to make sure that Hamas is not raiding the food or getting the food or doing, stealing the food and selling it and pocketing the money? But of course, United States vetoed a UN resolution here. I think it was earlier late last week. Turkey condemns interception of Gaza-bound aid ship and calls Israel a terrorist state or terror state. Parliament members Corbyn, United Kingdom, calls for inquiry into the United Kingdom's role into the Gaza war. A lot of information. A lot of British spy planes were capturing pictures of Gaza, feeding that information to Israeli Defense Forces. So we'll see where that goes. Investigation to Royal Air Force bases in Cyprus. Up our poll, let's put Israel seized the ship carrying humanitarian aid to Gaza. How should the U.S. respond? So 39% suspend all U.S. aid to Israel until it ends the war in Gaza, followed by continue to unconditionally support Israel in this war. Tell Israel to release the ship came in third. So with that, let me see if there's anything else, any comments, because we're going to switch gears from Gaza and Israel. By the way, over the next few weeks, we're going to have a full episode on Gaza, Israel. We have an expert coming on. We hope to have a couple of local experts, but this is a nationally renowned person that's going to be coming on the show to discuss an American woman who has been to that part of the world. We've invited, by the way, several local folks, rabbis included, to discuss the Israeli perspective, and we hope to have somebody that is pro-Zionist to come on the show to discuss, why is Israel justified. So if you have any recommendations, please reach out to Paul Marshall. What do you think about the split between President Trump and Elon Musk? Is that coming? Musk was right when he called Trump's big, beautiful bill a disgusting abomination. That's almost 54% of you, followed by dropping off substantially to they will quickly make up and be back on the same team. and no opinion. And third, what is the right deportation policy for the United States? And I'm going to come back to this because we got a couple of items that Bill wants to cover on Fresno Unified. What is the right policy to deport people? Deport only undocumented immigrants who've committed violent crimes was 51%, followed closely by deport all undocumented immigrants, which is interesting. We're going to be talking about that and the ramifications, pluses and minuses of that. Okay, we're going to come back to that. Let me see if there's any comments to deal with everything else before we get into the other issues. Yes, get the criminals out of California. Juna Brown, Jimmy Martinez. They make Fresno whiter, which all the Christian national racists support. Jimmy Martinez, terrorist being terrorist, big surprise. Turkey is correct. Jenny Garcia. Linda Samuelian, wow, that's really close split. No aid to just keep aid going to Israel. That must have been our previous poll results. Jenny Garcia, no to Zionists. Jenny Garcia, this is stolen land. Trump has no power here. Trump, okay. Jimmy Martinez, a lot of colorful comments on our Facebook feed that you can read yourself. Okay, we're going to switch quickly to Fresno Unified for just a couple of minutes before we dive into this. And I'm going to put this poll back up. Let me go into the immigration issue. So let's put up slide 10. Fresno Unified versus Long Beach Unified. Fresno Unified has twice as many administrators, lower test scores than its peer district. Bill, this is one of the articles that you helped produce. Did you have any comments besides the fact that Fresno Unified is very rich, a lot more staff per capita?
So, Darius, thank you. If you remember a few years back, Fresno Unified got in an alignment with other districts in California. They were called peer districts. So they were similar in demographics, similar in the amount of funding they received from the state, similar in challenges they face or have overcome. And so we compared Fresno Unified to Long Beach Unified. Fresno's students, a larger percentage, face socioeconomic challenges, but Long Beach Unified has 5, 6, 7 times the number of homeless students that it must deal with. And it was very interesting. The test scores in Long Beach Unified are significantly higher than they are in Fresno Unified. The other takeaway is, and people have debated this forever, does Fresno Unified have a bloated bureaucracy? So again, we're comparing peer districts, and look at those organizational charts there. One's pretty simple, even a dummy like me can follow Long Beach Unified's. Then you look over at Fresno Unified's, and I don't know, it looks like some kind of word puzzle or one of the puzzles you'd play on your telephone if you're bored during the day. And the bottom line is Long Beach Unified produces these higher test scores, and they have less than half the number of administrators that Fresno Unified has. So the question locally has always been, is Fresno's bureaucracy bloated? Clearly it is. And then this is very interesting to me. Long Beach Unified is doing this great job with students. It's an area where the cost of living is 38% higher than it is in Fresno, and yet Fresno Unified administrators are paid much more. So Fresno Unified's administrators are paid more to not do the job, to not deliver for students compared to Long Beach. And some of the other peer districts are Santa Ana, Garden Grove, and Garden Grove in particular has very challenging socioeconomic conditions for the families and the students. And they blow away both Long Beach and Fresno when it comes to student achievement. So it would behoove Fresno Unified to go down there and take a look at their operation and see what they're doing that we're not doing here.
Great points, Bill. A couple of quick questions, and then we're gonna. Mike Carbasi just joined us. We're gonna jump into the Fresno budget with Mike and Miguel. Um, okay, what's the comment on this from Fresno Unified? That's from Inga Schlegel and Linda Samuelian says, "Does where did that go? Is the numbers just? I'm sorry. Here we go. Fresno Unified is always top heavy, admin to teacher." And does Long Beach have English learners as we do at the same percentage as we do? And but first question, have we reached out to Fresno Unified to get their feedback on this yet?
Yeah, so no response from them. Fresno Teachers Association had a response. We had interviewed Misty Herr earlier on some of those subjects. So her comments there were noted. And also with Fresno Unified facing, what is it, a $49 million budget deficit. I mean, they're going to have to eliminate some positions, and the district has acknowledged that. As far as ratios go, there's one administrator for every 729 students in Long Beach Unified, and excuse me, one for every about 1,500 students in Long Beach. And in Fresno, it's one for every 729.
Got it. Thank you for that, Bill. Before we dive into the budget, Miguel Arias, Councilmember, do you have any? You worked at Fresno Unified. You have any comments on this?
That they have doubled, if not tripled, the amount of administrative overhead since I departed 6, 7 years ago, to the point that they've had to buy another massive, 5, 7 story building in downtown Fresno to fit the additional staff plus more, which is contrary to, the mission of the system and the district. We were very intentional back then. I mean, famously, I had like 4 different title director positions all at once. But that's what you do when you want to focus resources in the classroom and not at the furthest point of the classroom, which is a district office. I think the superintendent will have to engage in some significant reorganization and, cutting down significantly the district office that's grown into this, significant bloated position over the last few years under the watch of the last superintendent. So those are tough decisions. But if you're going to give the pink slip to cafeteria workers, bus drivers, teachers, and janitors, then you better start with the central office where folks can easily pick up additional tasks as they were for, decades before.
Got it. Thank you, Miguel. One comment from Linda Samuelian. Twice as many admin, too many cooks in the kitchen to effectively make a decent program to help students achieve English legal. Sounds like the cuts need to be in the admin department. Anyhow, I think we've GV Wire has written a lot of articles, but the data speaks for itself. 1428 students to 1 administrator at Long Beach Unified versus 727 students per administrator. So Long Beach Unified has half the number of administrators per student per capita. Okay, Councilmember Carbasi Council President Carbasi just joined us. Let's bring Mike on. Mike, tell us about the big, beautiful budget. I'm sorry, it's not the big, beautiful budget. It's Fresno City Council's working, not big and beautiful, but hopefully just beautiful budget. Mike?
The difference with our big and beautiful budget, and the council vice president can attest to this, we're actually going to help people. There's a difference there. So yeah, we have a $2.3 billion budget. It does grow every year. Again, our footprint is larger. We're a service business. We provide a lot of services to people that they count on. And so the mayor presented a balanced budget, again, his budget, but this is really where the council, it's one of the 2 most important functions we have, land use and budget. And so we gave him about over $50 million in motions. He has to now go back and balance the budget. And
I'm sorry, 50 or 15, 50 or 15?
50.
50.
And the reason why we do that, understand, yes, you're the mayor of an entire city and that's all great, but we basically get into the nitty gritty. We know our districts, whether it's District 3 in Southwest Fresno, District 2 in Northwest Fresno, or District 4 in Central Fresno. We know what's happening in our neighborhoods. And so we prioritize a lot of public works projects, um, money for parks, and how Measure P gets allotted. So this is really our time to set our annual priorities. Council Vice President, do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I would agree with you. I think we're very intentional in our budget to make sure that we actually kept the same level of service to the general public, whether it's police or fire. We added some resources there. We added a lot more resources for parks and recreational, even trees. We're going to trim more trees than we have in the past in our city's history, all while having a record level of reserve funds for a safety net. Looking at potentially borrowing because we have the best credit score in our city's history and having it all balance out. So I thank the council president for making sure that we controlled our fundamental fiduciary responsibility of the budget. Mayor makes recommendations and then we make the final adjustments. So I think this year we kept it to around 60 or 70 changes to the budget, which is, still significant, but clearly has a fingerprint of the council, which is our fiduciary duty.
Yeah, we did try to be sensitive to the fact that we understand we don't have those one-time dollars, but we still have that responsibility as much today as we did a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. And I'll reiterate something that the city manager said. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. She said it a few times. This is the most active council she's ever seen, that where we get into the nitty-gritty. We sort of micromanage. We don't just rubber stamp things. And I took it as a compliment when she says that kind of a thing, because she's been around for a couple administrations. And so you're going to see a lot happen over the next week, and next potentially Tuesday, we're going to get a budget reconciliation sheet to see what the mayor put in. But if we don't like it, we have every right and ability to say, hey, this is not working for us, and we're going to go out there and in the public and debate this thing and make a budget that we can all stand by.
And so for the audience, Mike and Miguel, the budget is going to be wrapped up and ratified by city council approximately when? And when will the public know all the details that's put on I'm assuming your website?
Great question. So, and Council Vice President, chime in whenever you want, Miguel. We, of course, potentially as early as next Tuesday. We have till the end of the month. And if the council doesn't like what it sees, we will wait as long as it takes to get to the right budget. We can always pass a continuing resolution if we had to buy us some time. I don't think we'll do that. We did that during COVID because it was a very special time. But if things work out and then we get all our priorities put in Tuesday, but the budget, what Council Vice President? Yeah,
in terms of just public process, today we published all the 65 changes to the mayor's proposed budget. So that's available to the public. It was done on the record. It's available on the website. By Monday, the administration will have their recommendations of what items they keep to balance the budget. And by Tuesday, the council will make the final decision on what final adjustments we have to make. But I'm confident that by Tuesday, with the council president's leadership, we'll have a balanced budget to begin to execute immediately.
Early.
Okay.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Okay, one last comment, and then we're going to dive into immigration. Okay. Linda Samuelian, yes, I need my city tree on my street trimmed. Garbage trucks are breaking branches. Linda, please put your address. I think we're gonna all walk over there and trim those.
This is a good example.
Kidding.
Let me explain how the budget process works. So when the mayor was trying to balance the budget, he presents his version. I think Council Vice President chime in because you led the charge on this. He presented a different tree trimming schedule. I think from 10 years, he went to 12 years. And I believe you made a motion on that.
Yeah, we did. And then we added $1 million to trim every single tree in the city parks proactively instead of letting them, die from lack of maintenance. And we also required them to replace every single dead or diseased tree in the city. That's a quality of life, a budget priority for the council, one that we get directly from our residents, which when you're trying to balance a sheet, by the budget, gurus, that seems to be an easy place to cut first. But for the council, it's the last place, and that's why we added more money versus less.
And we're also continuing eviction protection program, which really keeps people from that inroad to homelessness. It really helps stave off some of that. There's money for the infill program. I think $1 million was allocated towards that. Again, lots of public works dollars. We're continuing public safety. We may be adding a couple of what are called Lucas devices, which is like automatic chest compressions so that people can survive if fire department shows up first. And they've coded.
Got it. Okay.
Little things like that makes a difference for quality of life.
Couple of things. Linda Samuelian says, "Great, trim this, trim the dead trees, and occasionally, of course, the branches fall and damage cars and creates more liability, and of course, damage, injure humans." Chris Dowdy, how can you cover 1.2 billion in deferred maintenance on roads without borrowing an addition and adding to debt? Are you holding out
Oh.
hopes for Measure C to pass?
Oh, really good question. So if I can take
Yeah.
this, Council President,
Yeah,
we
go ahead,
have
you got
about
it.
1.5 billion of deferred maintenance. We're going to borrow 100 million, hopefully, to take on the first crack of that to residential neighborhoods. And yes, Measure C is part of that solution. If we get a better version of Measure C, we can actually bond out against Measure C and have the ongoing funding from Measure C. You know, it's really important to tell folks that we recognize the streets need to be fixed, but every day the amount of money that we raise from the gas tax decreases because more people are going to EV cars. So we have to be able to make up that difference by having a local measure that matches state and federal funds to be able to fix these roads. But if you ask the council president, number one complaint in the neighborhood, fix the street in front of me. Don't tell me about anything else. Fix the street in front of me, or else you really can't do your job on any other front.
Hey, I have a question. Is it a rumor or is it true that state of California is going to ban EVs because we want more revenue to fix the roads, or because there was a plan to do vehicle mile traveled pay per mile as you go, that kind of got dropped. Too many privacy issues. But is that a rumor or is that
I think it's more likely that the
banning
governor
EVs?
becomes the next president.
Yeah. One in one in four new cars in California are EVs. I mean, maybe they change the formula. Maybe we get charged more on our registration, but I don't think that's going to happen. There's just
Hydrogen. How about, okay,
Our
we're going to talk about
buses.
hydrogen at
yes,
some
our
point now.
buses are going to hydrogen. Yeah.
Good, because EV buses are so much heavier. There's so much more damage on the road. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay, did you get hit
I
by a
did.
tree limb
Learned
right
to
now?
spell. I did. In my EV, I got hit by a tree.
Okay. Okay, with that, we're gonna, let's see, anything else? Measure C was passed when? Okay, Measure C is coming up in the next year.
It expires
November.
at the end of 2026, so I'll have to be on the ballot for renewal in March or November of next year.
I don't know
Got
if
it.
GVY reported this, but so the Fresno County Transportation Authority, Council Vice President Miguel was on that board last year for 2 years. I'm on the board this year. Our executive director, Terry Ogle, has resigned. So July 4th is his last day. Tough thing that happened before.
Got it.
I don't know if you guys reported that, but that's also significant when it comes to the Measure C.
Okay, I'm gonna leave it with, unless Councilmember Arias has any other comments on this? No? Okay. Last comment, Linda Samuelian, I totally agree with you. Hydrogen is the new source.
Yep.
So I'm holding out for a nice hydrogen car. In the meanwhile, I'm not driving an EV. Okay. But it's a 1.5 liter turbo engine. Very cool and good on gas. Okay. With that, let's pull out, bring back slide 9. We're going to go into immigration reform, and what should be going on in our country. Okay. Again, the poll. What is the right deportation policy for the United States? Deport only undocumented, barely, and almost half of respondents said deport all undocumented workers. So I've spoken about this many times. I've written actually publicly about this, then taken opinion pages. As an immigrant who came here legally, applied for a green card, and went through the whole process, took a long time to get my green card, and eventually 3 years later became a proud citizen of our beautiful country. You want to deport all undocumented? I have just one simple question for those folks. Who's going to mow your lawn? Who's going to pick the watermelon? Who's going to build your homes? Who's going to work in the fields? Who's going to take care of the hospitality issues? Who's going to do the hard work? Talented, skilled work, but it's hard. It's not being in an office most of the time. It's not being, behind a desk where you can kind of scroll down your social media whenever you want to. Who's going to be doing that work? So to my fellow Republicans that say just deport all undocumented because they have broken the law. They're here illegally. They broke the law when they came here. And yes, I do believe in protecting our borders, but my issue with our current immigration program, and I think is, well, let me just bluntly say it. The government is not interested in addressing the issues and the needs of our country. If there was no jobs, people will not immigrate here. If there's no high paying jobs, if there was no demand from industry, so government, it's almost like I think before the show we were talking, Miguel brought up, you know what, the police can get a lot of DUI tickets, can issue a lot of DUI tickets outside of one of these, sports events, whether it's Fresno State or anywhere else. But how do we address this? People should come here legally, and I completely agree with that statement. But let's make legal immigration work. And so there's protests in Southern California. There was a protest here, peaceful protest here in Fresno. ICE raids happened in Fresno, and Miguel can correct me if I'm wrong. I think earlier this year, January, February, at a couple of plants. So we'll start with that video, and then I'm going to bring in Council Member Arias for his comments on immigration, immigrants, and how should government. Miguel has been in the education program, part of our government, Fresno Unified for a long time, and also a 6-year tenured member of Fresno City Council. So let's play that video, and then I'm going to ask Council Member Arias to comment.
Yesterday, I saw on social media that protests may take place today here in Fresno. And of course, initially I was concerned because the initial protests that were taking place in Los Angeles turned into riots. But actually coming out here, I really appreciate the people who are out here speaking. They are peaceful. They're sharing opinions which I don't necessarily agree with, but they're doing it peacefully, and I fully support their First Amendment right to be out here just demonstrating and doing that peacefully.
I went and I served this country so I could protect this Constitution. And I just don't see how we can do this when we call in the militia and the military to do the opposite thing of what I believe now, what I believe then.
I'm here as a community member. ICE raids should not be happening right now. It's ripping away families. It starts with due process and true immigration reform so that there's a pathway for people. This is unfair.
I personally believe that a surgical scalpel needs to be used, not an axe, not a broadcasting net, to separate families and to have hardworking families who are paying taxes, abiding by the laws, and making positive contributions to our community here in Fresno County and Kerman and places throughout this country. I believe that they should not be the focus of the administration's immigration enforcement actions.
Let me bring in Council Vice President Miguel Arias, who is also an immigrant, to talk about immigration policy. How should our government, and it's really federal government, address, there's at least 11 million undocumented, and yes, they've come here illegally. How should government deal with that?
The way I would frame this is first we should fire all members of Congress, because they have fundamentally failed to resolve and fix the single largest national security and economic issue before the country for the last decade. They pick up a paycheck every month, and only Congress has the ability to actually fix this outdated immigration system. Secondly, as a first generation immigrant who came to this country illegally when I was 2 years old and received legal status through the Ronald Reagan amnesty legislation, and now a citizen, I can tell you that when you establish a legal pathway for the undocumented population, they would adhere to it and they will follow that process. Just the way many immigrants have showed up to their court dates as required, simply to have their cases dismissed and be, handcuffed and taken in the courthouse and deported without the due process. So this is a fundamental failure of every tenured congressman who has continually promised us a solution while looking the other way and simply tweeting out their objections to a protest that's become a riot, which is simply what it is. It's a protest that turned into a riot, no different than a protest that turned into a riot on January 6th in the national Capitol. Although some of my Republican friends to this day still call that a protest instead of a riot, it is what it is. I think fundamentally, Darius, for everyone here, um, if we're going to simply take a wide brush and start picking up people at their workplaces, at their homes, at rating graduation high school graduations, then we ought to start also arresting employers. Not one single employer has been arrested in this country for hiring the undocumented community. Not one single business owner, not the CEO of Home Depot, not one, stay-at-home mom for hiring a gardener or a babysitter that of undocumented status. So is that really the country that we want to be? And if it is, then bring it on. I'd be happy to see the economic and social unrest when we start raiding, daycares, and we start raiding homes and garden shows and fairs, and start arresting the people who actually create the demand, which is American business. The American economy creates a demand for immigrant workers because the American workforce has chosen not to do low skilled work jobs in this country. And you can point fingers at whose fault that is, but it's a simply statement of fact. And I would argue that this all goes back to the members of Congress who have failed to act. I mean, how many congressmen, even our local congressman, Jim Costa's been in office for what, 2 decades? And not one bill that, progresses to a bipartisan negotiation. So I think too many of them are comfortable watching from their desk cities across the country burn and families be torn apart and simply argue. Our thoughts and prayers are with folks instead of actually fixing the issue.
I agree with you. I think President Reagan, I think you alluded to that a few minutes ago, was the only president that said, I have the guts, we are going to call it amnesty, and we're going to have this thing done. The people that have been here, and we are the shining city on the hill, from all walks of life, from all over the world, you're welcome to our country. And that was part of his farewell speech as well, where he said, the difference between us and all these other Western countries is that people feel welcome coming to these United States. You can, basically, we integrate you into our society, and you become an American quickly. You're not a foreigner. That was President Reagan. Watch his farewell speech for those of you who haven't had a chance to. We'll probably have it back on this show in the next couple of weeks, because I have a feeling this issue is not going to go away. And members of Congress are not dealing with it. Neither are presidents. The Democrats are not dealing with it on whether it's a union issue. Union labor doesn't want more immigrants here, and hardcore Republicans don't want it. And we really need a president and a Congress that has got the guts to reform this. Look at the Canadian model. They need labor, they need brain power, and they need investors. And it's a scale. You have to. If you have a degree, you get X number of points. If you have, you're a skilled labor person, you get X number of points, so on and so forth. And why can't U.S. government say, over the next 5 years, the needs of our country in these segments are as follows. So we're going to issue X number of visas, work visas, or green cards. In this category, we're going to do a quick vetting, and we're going to allow folks to apply. One of the most advanced countries in the world, we can't fix this. I think there's reasons why we're not fixing it. I think Chris Dowdy put a point on, there's just too much money. People can fundraise. The Republicans go, we're going to deport all people, and they can fundraise and get elected. And Democrats may say, hey, we're going to have to, fix this immigration policy. Sometimes I think we do some of that in some of our foreign policy and foreign wars. There's so much chaos, but there's a lot of money to be made in chaos and war.
I also want to address one item that's really important, and I want the public to understand. The reason the city has taken a position that we will not enforce immigration policy is a couple reasons. One is we are funded by local taxpayers. We don't ask what your legal status is when you pay taxes, and we collect that money to pay for our police officers. Secondly, of our whole police budget, which is half the city budget, only 1% comes from the federal government. The rest of it, another 3% comes from the state government. The rest of it comes from local taxpayers. So whether you are paying sales tax when you at the grocery store or when you're buying a vehicle, that is what funds our public safety apparatus. And we have a fundamental legal obligation to serve everyone, irrespective of who they are, when they call 911 or when they have a medical emergency or a fire. So the federal government has their responsibility and they need to meet their responsibility. And it starts with the members of Congress passing legislation and the executive branch actually dealing in a systematic and legal way through the due process that's laid out in our Constitution for how they exit people from the country when it's necessary.
Good points, Miguel. I'm going to bring in Ida Rashidian, again, our special guest. Thank you, joining us from Los Angeles, an immigration lawyer, graduate of New York Law School, and also UC Santa Cruz for undergrad. Ida, welcome. And let's bring, I want to bring Miguel on at the same time. Tell us about, ICE is basically following the direction of the president and the law of the land. And of course, now there's, the Marines are getting prepared to land in Southern California. And there's a poll that Bill McCune is going to talk about here in about a minute. Do Americans support Marines landing and detaining people? But kind of walk us and the audience, the GVWire Unfiltered audience, on the legality of these actions. And if you're an immigrant, illegal immigrant, and you're getting detained, I'm assuming some folks that may not be illegal are getting detained as well. Kind of explain that to the audience, and what rights do you have? Or do you just say, I'm just here illegally, so I'm just going to get locked up and get sent back to, first of all, where? And how much is that costing the taxpayers, if you do know that? I know if you were to deport all 11 or 15 million undocumented, it probably costs close to $1 trillion. Where are we going to house them? How are we going to detain them? Where are we going to find them? The damage to the economy, short and long term, and also who's going to pay for the flights? And where are they going to land? Okay, so with that, Ida, kind of shed some light from your perspective as an immigration lawyer. And again, thank you for joining us from Los Angeles. Kind of shed some light on how this works and what rights folks have, starting with ICE.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for having me. Oh, I'm
Oh, yeah.
hearing. Yeah.
Okay, let's try that again.
Okay. Is it better now?
Keep going.
Okay. So there's a lot of issues with what's happening right
Oh,
now.
wait a
We
minute.
hear,
Hold on. You're echoing.
yeah.
I can hear you echoing. You weren't echoing earlier on, before the show
No,
started. It's on your end, by the way. Do you have two mics open by chance? Maybe your phone and your computer?
I don't.
Okay. Let's try this again. And if it echoes, you may have to drop off and get back on. Turn your speakers down on your computer also. Okay, let's try that again.
Okay. Is this a little bit better?
There you go.
Okay. Now I just have to make sure I can hear you as well.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. So there's a lot of issues with what's happening right now. Are you guys still hearing a bounce back?
No,
Yeah.
no, keep going.
Okay.
No, keep going.
Okay. So one of the main issues is whether there's actually search warrants to be able to arrest these people and deport them, right? So there's some mixed results as whether or not there's search warrants or not, but even assuming that there are search warrants in place, there are there are a lot of people who are being deported, such as US citizens. They're actually being deported as well. Okay. And before in the past, US citizens were deported, but they were brought back. Now, who knows how long it's going to take you to be able to actually bring them back to the US. But generally, in order to deport you, you need to be inadmissible on some sort of grounds. And the main one that they're going after right now is unlawful presence in the United States and probably staying after a deportation order. So when they pick you up, if you have a deportation order, they essentially say, we're going to reinstate the removal order and you have no options. We're going to detain you, we're going to book you a flight, and we're going to send you back to your home country. So let's say you're Guatemalan, like the individual who was deported, and the judge came down and said, no, 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 you guys did not give him due process right. You need to bring him back, give him his day in court. And it's probably because he requested a reasonable fear interview, which is if you fear going back to your home country, something that ICE officers have to ask you about when they arrest you and when they want to process you for deportation. They have to ask you if you fear going back to your home country. If you say yes, they have to give you a reasonable fear interview. And during that time, you are detained or they can bond you out. And but you still get your day in court, right? So you still get to go in front of the immigration judge, explain to them why you fear going back. And right now, they're not giving that due process right to a lot of people. And the 3,000 immigrants that they're trying to pick up on a daily basis, it's just very unrealistic. We don't have the money for it. There's not enough beds for it. So, downtown, one of the places where the quote unquote riots were happening, has a federal building where the detention center probably houses about 100 people. There's been a lot of talk that there's over 1,000 in that small location. And, that in itself is a due process violation too, because do they have a place to sleep? Are they being fed? What is the process? Are they giving access to their legal counsel? Because I have been to those detention centers where I've been turned away before. And they've told me, oh, well, we can't find him yet. Come back the following day and we'll be able to show him to you, right? Because I have a motion to reopen pending, preventing them from actually deporting them until the judge makes a decision. And before they would allow you to do that. Now they're saying, too bad, you can wait outside of the country. If your motion to reopen gets granted, then we'll let you back in. But then who knows how long that process is going to take.
Got it. Thank you, Ida. Let me bring there we go, Miguel back on. Miguel, what steps City of Fresno is not, I'm assuming is not taking any steps, but what steps should citizens of Fresno take?
Well,
to
first, let
address
me
this?
tell you this. The city has, like many municipalities across the country, been threatened with withholding federal funds. Let me be very crystal clear. If the federal government intends to legally withhold our federal funds that we have earned, and we will meet them in court. Like every other jurisdictions, we have a right to sue the Trump administration for illegal withholding of federal funds and contracts that we have legally entered into and that we've delivered. And just to be crystal clear, when we have a grant or a contract with the federal government, it's on a reimbursement basis. We do the work first, and then we get reimbursed for doing the work. If we accept a grant for, taking off DUI drivers off the street, after we, pay all the overtime for DUI checkpoints, we submit a reimbursement request and we get reimbursed. If the Trump administration insists on weaponizing federal dollars that Congress has approved and that we have legally engaged in a contract with and not pay us, it's money that we've paid, we're a contributing state in the national economy, then we will see him in court and defend the rights of our taxpayers to get back the fair share of federal funds that we've been awarded and we have earned and we have performed the work on. Secondly, what I would ask residents is this. This is the epicenter of undocumented residents in the state of California because of the agriculture economy that we have. The vast majority of the crops being picked in the peak of harvest season, which is this upcoming month and the next few months, will be the undocumented workforce. If folks and the federal government decides to weaponize and show up to the ag fields and the poultry plants and the Amazon distribution centers, then they should be prepared to be recorded, to be reported, to be monitored by the local residents, without interference and any illegal actions. But we're going to track and report and protect each other from any illegal actions and make sure that, we watch out for one another. We've done that in natural disasters, we've done that in national disasters, and we're going to do this now. So at the end of the day, we're talking about our neighbors and our family members, and we're not going to stand idly by and watch their due process constitutional rights be completely run over.
Thank you, Miguel. I'm going to bring in Bill McEwen to address the polling that was done. I think it was yesterday or the day before on bringing the Marines, maybe even earlier today. But again, I want to reiterate because there's a lot of comments on our Facebook feed. We need legal immigration, but our government is not addressing the needs of folks that want to immigrate here legally, and addressing the needs of businesses that need those workers. By the way, I think this problem will probably go away in the next 10 to 15 years as AI and robots end up doing a lot of the work that now we're relying on humans to do. But if all 11 million undocumented, and there's probably another 4 or 5 million that to add to that number that are working here, some of the folks who have been here over a decade, maybe 2 decades, they just see no pathway to citizenship. And some of these folks are very skilled labor that is just hard work that most folks that are born and raised here don't want to do. It's going to be a different country. I don't know what's going to happen to our economy. My guess is going to sink substantially if all of those folks were deported. First of all, a giant cost to our economy in terms of the deportation process. And number two, again, who's going to mow the lawn, pick the fruit, build the homes, work in hospitality, and so on and so forth. So let me bring in Bill McEwen. Bill, and let's put up slide 28 and address any other issue that you've been working on today.
Thank you, Darius. So this isn't a poll about immigration. It's a poll about the deployment of Marines to the LA area in reaction to these protests. And it was done by U.gov today, surveyed more than 4,300 US adults. Only 34% approve of this maneuver, 47% disapprove. Somehow you have a number that doesn't have an opinion or they're not sure about it. I can't quite understand that. But if you break the numbers down, 68% of Republicans actually approve of this. It's opposed by 75% of Democrats. So we have the story up. You can go to the link and see the full U.gov survey, but this comes on the heels of plunging poll numbers for President Trump this week. Those poll numbers taken after the big split with Elon Musk and the fact that Americans are learning about the big, beautiful bill and how much money it'll cost us over the next 10 years, $2.5 trillion. And the fact that tax cuts are for the wealthy and not for the working class, let alone the poor.
Thank you for that, Bill.
And if no, Darius, the Department of Defense Secretary just announced today that it's costing the government $138 million to send the National Guard to California. And that's on top of $1 billion for the improvements to the wall that they have not executed. And you would think that after that amount of money, it's going to cost at the cost of something else. There's something else in veterans benefits or military readiness for international conflict or national security challenge that they're going to have to pull money from. So there is a cost to weaponizing a public safety apparatus, and in this case the national security apparatus.
Got it. Let me bring Ida back on with Miguel. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill had a comment. Bill?
Yes, very quickly, Darius. Also, another cost, those Marines, those 700 Marines deployed to LA, it's not in, well, let's put it this way. The deployment is the last 60 days. So in other words, the president wants to have intimidating force there to prevent any other demonstrations. That's going to cost $134 million. So he tasked Doge and Elon Musk with reducing costs in federal government. And because of his whims, because of his need to create a circus to divert people's attention from real issues, he's rolling on another $200 million for people. And that doesn't include the $45 million for the parade, the military parade in his honor on Saturday, a parade in honor of a draft dodger who never served a minute in the armed forces and in fact called those who fought in wars. I don't remember the exact term, but it was reported and it was very derogatory.
Okay, let me end guys a question. What was the cost of Biden's open border policy for 4 years?
There wasn't any formal policy of open borders. Biden arrested and deported more people in his tenure than President Obama did. But the difference is that he actually went through the due process, engaged in arrest warrants, gave people due process, convicted and prosecuted them, and then deported them. That's not what the Trump administration is doing. He's doing the most laziest possible thing possible, which is show up at a public place and pick up as many people as possible. And, don't worry about what happens in the back end and their due process rights, which nobody in this country would ever accept being booked into jail for a traffic ticket without ever going before a judge, or being deported out of state because you were speeding without ever having your court date before a judge. It is a civil violation to be here undocumented status, and there's a process for going through that and being deported. And that is the fundamental difference. Is President Trump has engaged in the laziest policy for immigration enforcement in this country's history, outside of the massive deportations that occurred in the 40s and 50s. It's not who we are, and we should expect more of the president.
Thank you, Miguel. Ida, let me bring you in for final comments before we wrap up the show.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit crazy about because he did this the first 4 years where everything got more difficult. They were putting people in proceedings, reopening cases, as in if it was admin closed, individuals would go to their ICE officer and say, hey, I'm checking in with you like my immigration judge asked me to on a monthly basis, weekly basis, whatever it may be, right? And they were fine with them. And they said, fine, you pay your taxes, you're living here, and we're not going to do anything. Now they're opening all of those back up. So you're going to these things to check in and, abide by the law, abide by the court's order. And instead of them doing what they're supposed to do, which is to say, okay, yes, you're fine, you're not doing anything illegal, they're just arresting you right then and there, putting you in a detention center and deporting you and not giving you that due process right. I mean, unfortunately, I feel like we've been taken back more than 50 years, 60 years since this current administration, because it's definitely a lot worse than what it used to be when he first came in. Now it's just a different ballgame because there's no oversight. There's no oversight right now, and that's the issue.
Thank you for that. Bill, final comments, and then we'll get to Miguel and I'll wrap up.
No, I just want to thank Ida for being on, and learned a lot tonight. And, I just worry for America where, I would hope we'd have 80% of Americans saying, let's go by the Constitution. I would hope that more Americans would realize that we're led by a president who has no respect for the law and wants to be king. And there just doesn't seem to be that recognition by enough Americans to do something about it.
Thank you, Bill, for that. Miguel, final comments.
I would simply say this. History will be the greatest judge of how this president has executed his immigration policy. And, there'll be a moment for us to reflect on whether cruelty was a point. And that seems to be the only point with this administration. And it is these moments where we're going to have to look back one day and said, who stood silently and watched this happen? Because to just pick up people off the street, show up at their schools, show up at their places of worship is completely not the America that we all grew up, especially those as new immigrants, the America that we learned and the America that we were tested on to get granted citizenship. So I think, for those Republicans who are supportive of this approach, I would say, then, let's go the next step and have farmers and business owners also arrested for employing this workforce. Then you can really truthfully say that you support this approach in terms of immigration. And I assure you, not one Republican member of Congress in the Central Valley would ever support the arrest of a farmer who's benefiting tremendously from the undocumented workforce. And that's the complete hypocrisy that we're operating under. So, I ask people to look out for each other. This too shall pass, but there definitely will be some long-term damage to families and to the country.
Thank you, Miguel. And my final thoughts are, the values of, I keep going back to Ronald Reagan and his many speeches about the values of our country, the shining city upon a hill, and why we're so different from all the other countries around the world, that people give up their home, their friends, their livelihoods, however small it may be in other parts of the world, to immigrate to this country because we can't immigrate and assimilate easily, and we become Americans. And one of the reasons our country is so successful is because of the immigration and immigrants from Europeans to Middle Easterns to Mexicans to Canadians to folks from all over the world, to Chinese Americans, Asian Americans from Southeast Asia, etc. We come in here, we work harder, we smart. I mean, we work smart. We want to make a better life for ourselves. And some of us are not. We didn't leave a war-torn area, part of the world, and some of us have. And that's the edge America has over so many of its competitors. I'm so glad China is not that country, because Chinese are so much advanced in so many other areas than we are. But we need comprehensive immigration reform. Members of Congress that cannot support that, and I agree with Miguel, then you're doing our country a disservice. All the folks that are here that are the backbone of our country, you're doing them a disservice, and you're doing the businesses a disservice. So we need to. I hope that this conversation and this debate and the actions in Southern California and in other parts of the state and eventually other parts of the country will spark a very serious debate in Congress, and those members of Congress that do not want to do comprehensive immigration reform. And yes, there's going to have to be some kind of an amnesty, but pathway to legalization that most presidents have supported. President Reagan was the only one that actually executed that. There is not a pathway for folks that are here. We address those, we do background checks, but create pathways so our economy doesn't suffer, and so we don't tear apart families that have been here decades in some cases. Those members of Congress, we're going to remember that in elections of in 2026, and that's coming up. Any final? There's a lot of comments. This is a hot topic amongst many folks in our country, especially here in California, and especially in the Valley. Too many comments to actually to read, but you can read them on our Facebook feed. But my urging and my request and really my demand to our members of Congress here in the Valley is we need comprehensive immigration reform. Bills introduced quickly and approved quickly. Elections are next year, and we're going to remember that.
And if they can't do the job, Darius, they should step aside and let somebody else do it. It's sometimes okay to say, you know what, I'm not good enough. I've been here 30, 40 years in office. I can't do it. Okay, then step aside and let the next group try. Let the next group find compromise. So to all those congressmen who spent millions of dollars getting elected, if you can't do the job, then step aside and let the next guy do it.
Great.
Or the next girl.
Great point. Bill, did you have something to add to that?
Well, expresses my sentiment. You know, I've been on the immigration reform for about 20 years, and one of the watchers talked about raising money, and that's absolutely what's going on. This current broken state works for both political parties. It gives both political parties something to rail against and to raise campaign money on. And it's really sad, but that's the fact of the matter. They're not really interested in fixing the situation. They're interested in staying in Congress.
Another great point. I think you echoed a lot of our sentiments, Bill. Ida, do you have any, by the way, recommendations from members of Congress? What should they do immediately that's easy? Or for President Trump, what should he be doing quickly?
Well, I want to leave Trump out of it because he wouldn't be doing things that are actually going to give the illegal community the relief that they need. But one of the main things is DACA for kids that were here their entire life. Why is that not law yet? Why have we not passed that into law where people are now, like you said, people have been living here since they were 2 years old. I have a client who has been living here since he was 2 years old, brought here illegally with his parents. And he asked me, he was like, what am I going to do if they deport me to Mexico? I don't, and he used to be a DACA recipient, right? But
How
then
old is he,
they
by the way?
stopped
How old
doing
is he? How old is he?
He is 38 right now.
Okay, so he's
So
only been here 36 years. If he was
only
here
36
maybe
years.
80 to 100 years, we could maybe
Right.
grant him legal status. Okay, keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's it. Just passing those laws, right? Instead of executive orders, instead of policies, just passing laws where they're not so easily replaceable when a president comes in who just wants to pursue his objection, which as of right now is getting rid of all illegal immigrants, which I would like to add one point that criminals have always been prosecuted within the immigration system. Criminals have never gone away. So the fact that everyone thinks that these individuals are all criminals is the problem, is the issue that we're having. And this is why a lot of people are getting angry and a lot of people are going out and protesting because, it's just he's just enticing more violence instead of just saying, okay, let's fix the issue, let's pass some laws that are going to help people get the relief, because like you said, people want to get legal status. There's a reason why they come to this country. They want to live here, they want to pay taxes, and they want to continue raising their family in a safe environment instead of in a country where they're going to get threats for driving a car.
No, and I think I've talked to several of my Republican friends over the weekend. They said, "Hey, we supported President Trump in deporting criminals, people that are actually committing violent crimes that are in our country. Not for folks to go into Home Depot and arrest people that are working and stocking our shelves, etc. I mean, that's not what I supported and what I voted for." With that, I want to remind everybody that's still on with us over the next couple of weeks, and we'll broadcast this. We'll have a special guest to talk about Gaza, Palestine, Israel, rights of people. Is it apartheid? An American woman that has been to that part of the world several times, and she'll talk about the history of Palestine and the formation of Israel and the rights of those folks. It's going to be another show that we're going to have for you to bring you some good information, and you be the judge. On behalf of all of us at GV Wire Unfiltered, I'm going to first thank Council Vice President Miguel Arias for joining us this evening, and your great perspective on immigration and immigration reform, and members of Congress, by the way. We're going to echo that here on GV Wire in the days to come. Ida Rashidian, immigration lawyer from Los Angeles, thank you so much for joining us this evening. By the way, your brother is an incredible local pulmonologist and physician who has been on this show a few times, and we hope to get him back to give us some tips on how to deal with summer heat and making sure our lungs are staying healthy. And of course, my colleague Bill McEwen, news director at GB Wire, and our behind the scenes folks, Paul Marshall, Jaws Tello, and Eric Martinez. On behalf of all of us, thanks everybody. Have a great week and look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday for another great show. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.